we go. Now, today I'm going to talk a little bit about Hogger, my favorite null, also the only null in the Nexus. I'm mainly going to be talking from the perspective of a 4-man Hogger, because that is the Hogger I have most experience with. But I also know quite a bit about the offlane variation of Hogger and how to play it. They are fairly similar, to be honest. And in teamfights they play exactly the same. Yes, I will be recording this Rock Your World, so you can feel free to leave at any time. This will be going up on the YubTubs. So first, a little bit about myself. I am Mindhawk. I have played in the Masters Clash. I'm a Grandmaster to Masters player. I'm a Hogger enthusiast. I have 80 games on Hogger here, but I have about 20 to 30 more combined in scrims and competitive games. And I really like Hogger. And I think he is one of the most fun heroes, and I wish I could play him more, but my team captain doesn't always draft him, sadly. Contents. Today we're going to be talking about the overview. What does Hogger do? What does Hogger bring to a team? Why should you draft Hogger? What are the ups and downs? I'm going to talk a little bit about each ability, including his traits. I'm going to be talking about what kind of build variations Hogger has, the power spikes, some tips and tricks, and then I'm going to be moving on to the questions and mainly going to be showcasing stuff. So first of all, Hogger. He's known as a hero with a very high skill cap. You can squeeze a lot out of Hogger. There's a lot of minute things that you can do with Hogger, mainly related to both his spin and his rage mechanic. And of course, he has spin to win. His E is his most defining ability. He has extremely strong camp clear. Even after the nerf to his camp clear, I still think his camp clear is one of the fastest and strongest in the game. He has, basically at any moment in time, he has a lot of possible plays because of the way his trait works, the loot horde. He's very good at diving. He can be played in both the 4-man and solo, which makes him very flexible while drafting him. And he's especially a late game powerhouse, but he is also very good against in bullying a lot of matchups. A lot of heroes just don't do anything against Hogger or get out-rotated or get out-cleared, which makes Hogger very strong for getting rotational priority. So, Hogger's D, Loot Horde. The primary thing I use this for is to body block enemies and for sustain. So what do I mean with body block enemies is that you can interrupt enemies' rotation paths. Because it is actual terrain, it is not like Tacitor's Force Wall. You will actually be interrupting their pathing, and their hero can sometimes do a full 180 from where they clicked because the pathing is interrupted. Which, if you're playing against Hogger, is very annoying. If you're playing with Hogger, it can be very annoying, but is very strong if you're playing Hogger because it can completely screw over an enemy's game plan if they accidentally walk the wrong way because you interrupted their pathing. The other main use for Loot Horde is the sustain, and of course you can set up your own stun. There's a bit of nuance to using it for your own stun, especially because if you do it too quickly, you will interrupt your own Q ability. I will talk a little bit about that later, doing the tips and tricks. The second trait Hogger has is Rage, and Rage does two things. It does cooldown reduction to all of your abilities, and it does spin damage. It is quite a lot of damage on the spin, 50% at full Rage, and it is also quite a lot of cooldown reduction, 50% cooldown reduction at full Rage. Now, the way that cooldown reduction in HOTS works is that if you have 50% cooldown reductions, you will not have halved cooldowns, but your cooldowns will tick down 50% faster, which means that if you have a 3-second cooldown, every second of cooldown that ticks takes 1.5 seconds takes half a second faster. So a 3-second cooldown would become a 2-second cooldown. And Rage is also very important for sustain healing with On the Prowl, which I consider to be the best level 1 at this moment, but there is another very good talent on that tier. Keeping Rage up is what you're looking to do as Hogger most of the time when you are not doing anything of importance. If you're rotating, if you're in lane, You want to auto attack every so often just to keep your rage up, because as long as you have full rage, you are extremely threatening in lane, because you can just spam your abilities. You have no mana, so you literally never have to Hearth, and your abilities get quite a short cooldown, especially your W at full rage. So first of all, his first basic ability, Staggering Blow, is the knockback on his Q, which turns into a Diablo Q if you hit a wall, which means that they get stunned and they take double damage. The two main things you can do with this is disengage by queuing them away from you and immediately walking away. Just by using it as a knockback, you don't even use it as a stun, usually in this case. And you can use it as an engage for your team by stunning enemies against walls, by plonking down your D, by queuing them into an ally skill shot, etc. And another very important part about Staggering Blow is that it builds rage for every target you hit, not for every hero or if you hit a hero. So what that means is that if you are in lane as Hogger and you want to build up your rage quickly, that you don't actually need to stun an enemy hero or whatever. You just need to stun a minion wave, because you gain 15 rage for everything you stun. So as you can see, I queued once and I basically fully built rage off of a minion wave. And that is very important to understand in lane when you are trying to bully an enemy hero, because without rage you're just not nearly as much of a threat. Easy Throw Dynamite, it's a slow. It requires quite a lot of mechanical practice to hit. The biggest tip I can give is to just, go into try mode and, just spam this ability until you can, know how to land it. And the two primary uses for this is to refresh your rage, because it builds a little bit of rage. I don't think it's good for building rage, but it's good at refreshing the decay. And for sustain with W1. Outside of that, it is a nice little slow. It can set up your Q a little bit because it does slow them. But Hogger gets a stronger slow at level 13. And I don't personally like W build, which I will be talking about in a little bit. His E, Hogwild. This is what makes Hogger into Hogger. This is what makes him threatening. And his E has a very high skill cap. So if you misuse your E, you're killing yourself. But if you use your E properly, you reposition yourself for Q, you can body block people, you can clear camps nearly instantly, you can, what's it called? On Infernal Shrines, you basically solo the entire shrine without the enemy team being able to do anything to you. And it's one of the strongest basic abilities in the game. But it's also very easy to misuse. The easiest way to use this is just to use it on camps. And you can also use this as a complete disengage from anyone trying to murder you. Because if someone is chasing you, all you have to do is just E away. Because this cannot be interrupted by anything, because you become unstoppable. And also using the unstoppable frames for stuff like temporal loop, cleansing a blind on you, cleansing a stun that's about to hit on you, cleansing, getting through a Melfruit that is on the floor, is also really a really strong part of Hogwild. Unstoppable is one of the strongest status effects in the game, and being able to have it on demand is really, really nice. His ult, Hortipult. Hortipult is a very strong engage in my opinion, because you throw yourself at the middle of the enemy team, but unlike engaging with your E, Hogwild, you still have all of your threat on you. Because if you're in the middle of the enemy team, it is very easy to hit everyone with your E, deal massive damage, apply pummel to everyone, it's 13. And you can also use Hortipult as an escape. You can use it to unstoppable yourself, you can use it to dodge a skill shot, you can use it for healing, you can use it to zone someone away with the damage because of garbage fire, and it's just really, really versatile. And not only that, but it has a very short cooldown at 60 seconds. And 60 seconds basically means it's up for every team fight. So I like to use this as either an engage, or if the enemy is really threatening, I use it as a disengage, if that means that we get something from that. But you can also use Hortipult, level 10, to completely block off a corridor. Because this corridor right here, if you place down a loot horde, enemies can still path around this one. But if you have this, enemies, when they try to right click here, will start pathing in the complete opposite direction. And most paths, most corridors in the game are actually about this size, which means that with both Hortipult and Loot Horde, you can usually stop an entire team from leaving, because you completely block them with just two Loot Hordes and with a Loot Horde and Hortipult. And with Garbage Fire, you will also be dealing nearly 120 DPS to everyone that is trying to path through these. But the most powerful part about this is, instead of, say, Force Wall, is that they will actually, when they're spamming right click, will path all the way around, which makes them very easy to set up your Q against a wall like this, to have your teammates hit them, etc. Shockwave. Shockwave is my less preferred ult. I don't like it nearly as much because it's not as versatile. However, that doesn't mean Shockwave is bad. Its main use is to either peel enemies off of your teammates with the stun, or to follow up on one of your allies' abilities, one of their wombos, because the close by stun is 1.5 seconds, which is very nice. Your Q is half that at 0.75 seconds for comparison. However, the reason why I don't like Shockwave nearly as much is because I don't feel Shockwave does anything that your Q doesn't already do, but at a much lower cooldown. While Hortipult provides you with many options in stuff to do in team fights. Builds, Hogger has not a lot of build variety in comparison to some heroes. I will be talking about two builds. There is a third auto attack build, but I don't think it's good at all, and I don't think you should pick it. There is the meta build and there's the W build, and what I mean with the meta build is this style of build, which is either of the trait ones, though I also like to combine it with W1, with either trait 4 or spin 4, Hortipult, and Garbage Fire. Or very sometimes I also like to go for Seeing Red if I don't need Garbage Fire. Though I think Garbage Fire, if you're picking Hortipult, is nearly always the correct option. But Seeing Red's extra cooldown reduction can be very good. Why would you pick this build? This build has very easy and high rage uptime. Rage does a lot for you in this build because you gain movement speed from it, because you heal for an insane amount during it while you have high rage. And it is also the best Hogger build for diving. And what I mean with that is that you can either use your R or your E to dive in the middle of the enemy team, stun everyone against the wall with your 16, block everyone with your Hortipult, with your Loot Horde, Garbage Fire everyone, dodge all their skill shots with your 15% movement speed, and you basically never lose rage because your level 1 helps you keep it up so much. Because your level 1 can give you the rage while you're rotating, and while you're in some place where you don't need to rotate, you can just auto-attack minions and stuff. There's also the W build, which is relatively similar, but takes the W7, W16, and W1 talents. I don't like this build as much. It is more of a poke build. It is a lot more safe. It can get a lot of burst healing, but it is not nearly as threatening while diving, and it is also a lot less reliable in my opinion. You get baited into using your Q for on top of your W, which I really dislike, because your Q is one of the strongest basic abilities on when it's stunning. If you're not stunning with your Q, of course, it's not nearly as strong. And you also give up a really, really strong 16 in Q16, which is a more skillful talent. If you're not able to land your Qs and stun people with it, I think W build gains a lot. So what I mean with that is, if you are not comfortable playing Hogger, I think this is a more better beginner build to get into Hogger, though I think it also builds bad habits for you. Outside of that, he does have some trap talents, and mainly these 4 talents I think are very much trap talents. Bones to Gnaw used to be a very strong level 1, however it did get nerfed when Hogger's trait was nerfed from 15% healing to 12% healing, and now Bones to Gnaw is only 24%, is only a 12% health increase every 20 seconds, which I think is a lot worse, especially since Garbage Fire did get nerfed from 4 seconds cooldown reduction to 2. This used to have enough self-sustain to where you didn't really care about any chip damage, but now that's no longer the case, as well as both of its competitions, W1 and On the Prowl, did get buffed quite significantly. Dust Devil used to be extremely strong on PTR, back when it gave you 60 armor. However, it has been nerfed twice since then. It got nerfed from 50 to 40 armor at above 50 rage, and while you don't have 50 rage, it literally doesn't do anything anymore. It used to give you 30, now it gives you 20. But 60 to 40 armor doesn't sound like such a big difference, but 60 armor is roughly 2.5 times more valuable than 40 armor. The difference is actually insane. And 40 armor doesn't let you spin infinitely in enemies, basically, which is why you would want Dust Devil. And in most use cases where you would be like, well, I could really use 40 armor, say you're getting Pyroblasted, etc., you can also just reduce the enemy spell power by 50% and take even less damage, but also have a slow, but also reduce their healing. Bloodthirst. I want to like Bloodthirst, but the big issue is that this only works on heroes. So you can, if Bloodthirst worked on non-heroes, you could enter every single fight on full health, and you could heal from minions during fights, but it only heals from heroes. And if you're hitting heroes, 33% of the damage dealt just isn't going to be enough to actually matter. And it's just outclassed by Pummel. And then Berserker. I really like Berserker. I think if you are going non-W build and you cannot land your Q, I think Berserker is the pick. But it is baiting people towards auto attack build, which I think is a very unoptimal way to play Hogger. The movement speed is nice, but it's kind of a crutch for when you E badly and you don't W or Q enough to where the basic attack increase really makes the difference. Meanwhile, Headbanger, 8% of someone's maximum life and a half-second stun is insane. Power spikes. These are what I consider to be Hogger's biggest power spikes. Level 13, I think Pummel is single-handedly the talent that makes Hogger extremely strong in competitive. Because, of course, I am talking from a competitive point of view. I think Pummel is one of the strongest talents in the game, period. Because this is Leoric's Spooky Ghost at 13, except it's also a slow, and you don't have to do no damage during it. You can easily pummel an entire enemy team at once and have an extremely high impact with Pummel in a team fight. And as soon as I reach 13 is when I can actually dive enemy teams and enable my team to basically take no damage in response. It's a really insane talent. The second biggest power spike I consider to be in his kit is his 16. However, that's of course only if you land it, because Headbanger is what I'm talking about here. It gives you an additional half-second stun at 8% max HP damage, which, if you consider the base damage, which is about 400 on a stun, it's about a 60 to 100% bonus damage depending on which heroes you're hitting. But the extra half-second stun lets you get off another auto attack. It lets your enemies not move so much because you have cooldown reductions. Your cooldowns all take down more. Your allies have a very easy time following up on you. And that's why I think Headbanger is really, really strong. Level 10 Hoarder Pulse is what I talked about before. I think it's just so versatile. You can do so much with it. And then the level 20 No Control. The reason why I have No Control this low on the list, even though No Control can have really, really big moments, is that this is also really easy to throw the game with. If you No Control at a bad time, you just kill yourself. But if you have something that enables No Control, if you have, say, a Divine Shield or something, the amount of damage No Control does, even post-nerf to Hogger's E damage, is just kind of insane. And enemies can't really run from No Control. It usually does like 5k to 8k damage in a single team fight, sometimes even more. And that much damage on a single button press is pretty disgusting. But if you do press No Control at a bad time, it does take a lot of practice to get No Control right. And if you do No Control wrong, you're just killing yourself for no gain, because you are locked out of your hero for 5 seconds. Tips and tricks. The big one I would urge everyone to do is to take Hogwild off of Quick Cast. If you are doing camps, if you're doing PvE, if you're on a shrine, etc., you will basically always need to have your E be precise. You will always need to aim it somehow, and having it off of Quick Cast, even if you're running away from someone, and you can check to see when exactly does my E bounce off of this wall, so that I can get this extra bounce off and live. I think that's so important with Hogwild that you should take it off of Quick Cast. And there's not a lot of abilities where I would be like, you need this off of Quick Cast, but I think Hogwild is one of the few. Your W, Dynamite. If your enemies are forced to walk in a certain direction, that's the easiest time to land it. When they're chasing you, when they're running away to towers, etc. These are the moments you should be looking to hit your W with 100% accuracy. Because if your enemy's walking in a straight line, you should never miss your W. How to quickly get infinite spins. I'm going to go quickly onto Infernal Shrines for this one. Because this is Infernal Shrines is probably the map this tip is most applicable to, because it's the one it has the most impact on. But every camp in the game, with the exception of the tri-mode camps and I believe the warhead camps, you can have an infinite spin on those maps. And being able to quickly get an infinite spin off on some of these is really, really strong. So what I mean by infinite spin is just a spin that goes infinitely. So this one this one won't go infinitely, but it'll go for quite a long time. But as long as you're doing this, any enemy is basically completely zoned out of this entire area. And anything that is here, say PvE or a camp, will die very quickly. So the traditional way that you would do your E on something like this camp is that you would stand on a certain edge of the camp and you would aim your E. And the way you would aim it is so that when these two lines of the bounce and the primary, when they overlap, so when they become one line, this is when it becomes a near infinite bounce. You want to be quite precise. This will get out of control very quickly, but this will stay solid for quite a long while. This one can take quite a while to aim, though with practice it gets faster. But a really important one on, say, the Infernal Shrines objective is if you want to bounce infinitely like this. But this is actually really hard to aim. When will this become infinite? And this is also one of the ones where there's nearly always enemies around. So what you can do is you can hold space to lock your camera to yourself, hold your E, I have it on release, and aim towards the colon in your time indicator at the very top, because that is exactly centered. So I aim for the middle of the time indicator, and I very quickly get a near infinite bounce. And this one will go on, it does depend a little bit. This one usually goes on for like 2 minutes, and you can take a sip of coffee, you know, do whatever. It's just a very, very nice and efficient way of aiming your E. Next up, you should be using your E in a fight, so, you know, not in an objective situation like this, but if you're team fighting, your E should be one of the last abilities you should be using, because as soon as you use your E, you cannot cast any other abilities, which means that if you haven't used your Q, W, or trait, or your ult yet, that you are not using any of those abilities. Well, if you first Q, W, and then E, you at least are ticking down your cooldowns while you are going around spinning. It isn't always the case, obviously. Sometimes you're going to be E-ing and self-canceling your E just to get into a good position to stun someone with a Q. So say this is an enemy hero, I can accidentally press Q instead of E. Let me get my rage. As you can see, this is a very slow way to build rage. But say this is an enemy, I can E like this, and then I can Q him after the E, and use my E to reposition myself. That's quite common. E does most damage to nearby enemies on cast. Now, what do I mean with this? When you are using your spin, Hogwild, you don't move that fast at first, but you deal just as much damage around you just as often when you are starting the ability as when it is, you know, at full speed. So if you are going at a slower speed, you will be damaging enemies around you more often. So if I am standing right next to the target dummy and I press E, I deal 228 damage. Let's try that a couple more times at different ranges. If it actually resets. 334. But, tying into the tip after this, E bounce instantly maximizes speed. What do I mean with this? Well, if you are E-ing, you slowly build up speed. And when the E ends is roughly when you are at maximum speed. However, if you are next to a wall, if you bounce, say off a wall or your E, you instantly get maximum acceleration. You instantly get the maximum possible speed. So if you need to get out and you're scared of the enemy auto-attacking you, what you actually want to do is go to a wall, E on the wall so that you instantly get maximum speed. However, to tie into this tip, your E, when it is at maximum speed, you will be next to an enemy for less long, and your E does not do damage faster when you are at maximum speed. So what that means is that if you're at maximum speed bouncing next to someone, you will deal less damage ticks. In this case, I believe we did 3. But if you start your spin right next to them, you will deal 5 or 6. Next up, you want a delay between your D and your Q if you are wall banging. What I mean with this is if you toss on your D and instantly Q, you will always miss your loot horde, because your loot horde takes a while to get going. And in the worst case, you can even cancel your own Q, because loot horde interrupts all knockbacks or pulls or dashes. Now what I mean with this can actually probably be best demonstrated with showcasing it with, say, a Maiev. Which we can take control of. Because Maiev's W pulls enemies towards Maiev. This one's actually not... Actually, I should grab a friendly Maiev. There we go. Because a friendly Maiev can pull the target dummies, because these target dummies are actually on the enemy side. So a friendly Maiev can pull a target dummy a certain distance. However, if they are mid-air and they are, you know, being pulled by Maiev, and you toss down your D on that moment, which is a bit hard to do if I'm all by myself. Should have thought this one through better. But if the loot horde lands while the enemy is being pulled, Stitch is probably one of the slower pulls, the entire pull stops with any friendly effects, including your own D, including your own Q. So this actually already needs to be in motion. Might actually be that Stitch's hook does not get interrupted. But actually one related thing is that you can use the terrain to interrupt some dashes, because not everything goes over wall. So if, say, an enemy Maiev pulls your team, you can put down a loot horde in between, and she cannot pull over terrain, so they don't get pulled towards her. That is probably the most reliable way to use it. But you can also interrupt a volley dashing, you can interrupt a Falstad E, which we might be able to showcase better actually. Because the way Loot Horde works is when it lands, in order to make sure people do not get stuck in terrain, it forces everything out of its area. That was my last tip. Any questions?
There was some really good tips there. I've got a question about the use of the Hordepult. Because I've been trying to learn Hogger and been unsuccessful at it so far, especially with the use of the ult. So could you just go over maybe how you would use it or tips on using it?
So, pretty important for Hordepult is that it is a vector targeted ability. And what that means is that if you use Hordepult, you decide on which side of the Hordepult you will land. If you didn't already know this one. So I can decide to land on the bottom, or the top, or the left, or the right of the Hordepult when it launches me. So if you are, say, at a wall, you're making a wall, you want to be on the side of the wall that your enemies are, so that you can wallbang them, for example. Or, alternatively, you can put down the wall for your teammates to disengage with, and then you can walk away because the enemies can't cross this without a dash. I didn't have any replays prepared to show this in a real game, sadly. I kind of got told that I was presenting today kind of recently.
I noticed the order you tend to be doing when you're creating walls is D first, then R.
That just depends because I'm showcasing. You can obviously queue them up in either order.
Yeah.
But another important part about Hordepult is that you are unstoppable during it. So say an enemy chromie like saw that you used your E, so you no longer have that unstoppable, and you have the loop ticking down on you. You can R just as the loop is about to hit in order to not get looped. But in general, I just use this as an engage mid-team fight, and maybe I can quickly find a replay if I go through my stats at the storm.
And suicide a lot with it.
So the main tip I can give you, if you're dying a lot when you're using Hortipult, is that make sure your E is off cooldown, that you can use your E after Hortipult. Because Hortipult does turn you into a target, but if you immediately stun them with Staggering Blow, and as soon as that stun runs out, you use your E, you become unstoppable, and you dash away. You should target your E in a way that you go through the enemies and then into safety. And you should also be aiming your Hortipult, you know, the part where you position yourself in a way where you will be hitting your Q. So actually we can go into try mode real quick for that one.
Choose a talent. Choose a talent.
If this would be an enemy hero, he is quite close to a wall, so I would, for example, loot Hortipult like this, stun him like this, and now I can body block him into this position because he's blocked by both my loot horde and my Hortipult. He's taking damage from both garbage fires, and I'm body blocking him in there, and I can keep hitting him. That kind of example, I hope that helps you. Is the force knockback on D the reason why it breaks Deathwing landing? Probably yes, because it is one of the few things that can knock Deathwing around. And I believe when they made Deathwing, they assumed nothing would be able to knock him around. Anyway, let me check my stats at the storm for any recent Hogger replays. Okay, here we go. Storm League. I hope it was this patch. 13. 7 Dragonshire. Here we go. So I didn't do particularly well this game, but we can skip to 10 and we can look at my Hortipults and how I use them. I was in the 4-man this game. Blaze was offlaning. Oh, actually, that's a good showcase for this. Just the way Hogger can really quickly take camps. So I go to this camp, I take it.
Capture the shrines.
I hop over here, I tap for health. I Q the camp for rage. And I line up my E. And this is how Hogger can really quickly take a camp, because Hogger can see walls, and you should be looking out for every camp how you can infinitely spin on that camp. I have full rage, I have Hogger's joggers, so I will be healing extra from my fountain as well. I'm defending a fountain because Genji is being a bitch. I do think we kill him for this. If there's any point where you would like me to slow it down because you want to see something I did, let me know. And that goes for everyone. So I kind of want to skip to 10. Alright, here I used Hortipult. So I could have used Hortipult here earlier to completely cut off this point. However, at this point I know I'm already dead, so I'm just gonna get Beaming because I'm already so low. I could have saved myself, but I didn't because, I don't know, Stormlink or something. Dragon Knight. Oh, I use Whirlpool here. So here I used Hortipult outside of a team fight in order to get onto someone who I had no other way of getting onto, the Imperius. Because it is also a 50% slow, so it's going to help set up my blaze. Sadly I had no interrupt for his kidnap, and their entire team was here. So then not having Hortipult is obviously very bad.
I guess the sustain from Hortipult isn't really strong enough to take that much into account for when you use it.
No, when you use Hortipult, it is mainly for the reposition, the slow, and the garbage fire damage. So sometimes you will keep a Hortipult around in a team fight and come back to it later to get the meat, but you should not be using it for sustaining. You should not be using it thinking about, oh, I will live with Hortipult's health. Very sometimes when you are in danger, and you are, you're dying to Lenora poison or something, and you Hortipult out to live, that is when the heal is going to be most relevant. So here I use on the Prowl to come in here with full rage. And this is actually a really good showcase of why you need to be very careful with your trait and your Q. So I use Hortipult here to engage on the Li Ming over a wall. And my plan here is to Loot Horde and stun her on the Loot Horde. I place down the Loot Horde, but I Q too soon. And you see she does not get stunned. Because I put down my Loot Horde, I queued too late, or too early, making my own Loot Horde knockback knock the Li Ming back up. And she actually lives because of that. And this is one of the few cases where the Loot Horde second heal comes out, but it will never dispense a third one. So I just cancel it for bonus healing. I wanted to get pummel off on the Li Ming, but she actually did a very nice combo on me with Seeker, which let me die. You'll also see that I cancel Hogwald quite often. And here I completely lock the Imperius in, but he does use his ult and Genji was here. If Genji wasn't here, Imperius would have died. I have one more left this game, by the way. This was not a very good game. But I hope it does showcase a little bit of how to play Hogger.
Yeah, very useful, thanks.
So, here, I see that, actually let's go back just a little bit. I see that Stukov is really far up to hit this, this tower, right next to a wall. So what I want to do, because I know that Stukov is a really vulnerable target to me, right? So what I want to do is stop him from escaping with a loot horde, and then I can just queue him against a wall and body block him to death. Exactly like this. I slow him with my E, and I did get zoned out by the Varian. I was unable to get to him, so I used Loot Horde. I use Horde Pulse to confirm the kill. I immediately cancel it to get the heal, but then I do get taunted and die.
That beast.
Any game where you're not doing well as Hogger, you can at least do this, by the way. Just take your camps off cooldown. Because you do them so quickly by yourself. So let's actually analyze this team fight. So here, I come in, I knock him against the wall, interrupt his ult, which is very nice. And then I want to Horde Pull to confirm the kill, because I know that if he lives, he's gonna heal. I no control, which I just got to keep up with him. And here we get a very nice triple kill. I can slow Genji, but he does use his E out, but we can just siege. And with the siege, I'm pretty sure we just win the game. Because we do have a hammer. Here's a very important thing. Hogger's D into Q is quite unreliable. However, if you have a teammate that can stun or set up in some way with a root or anything that denies their movement, even on very mobile heroes like Genji, you can just toss down your D, wait for it, and toss down your Q, and it will just kill someone. And this Horde Pult is for core damage and sustain. Because we are trying to end. And we do get the end. And that was my most recent Hogger replay. Does anyone else have any more questions? Because I think I've talked about everything I wanted to. So if there's no more questions, I think this is going to be it for today.
Thanks. Are you going to share the deck, by the way?
Hmm?
Are you going to share the deck or
The deck?
The presentation deck?
Oh, the link. Yes, it will be in the video description of the uploaded video because this is recorded.
Yeah, thanks.
And Valkamer will be posting the video link in a whatchamacallit? In a playlist. All right, then thank you for coming.
Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.